the pacing and the length of this episode really threw me for a loop coming off of last week. But an amazing cliffhanger ending. I don't know if it was completely earned because I was left wanting so much more. This is just getting good. And then it's over. There's a beauty in that formatting for the show, but also a deep frustration when you're like, dang, I want so much more.
I'm not put off by it that it was only 28 minutes long because the end felt like 30 minutes to me. As night is descending on the characters and the audience, this Sith is descending on our heroes, and it just felt so heavy. And with that gravity comes a time distortion, at least for me, of feeling like, wow, it kind of takes away any complaints I would have about the actual runtime of the show.
Krypton to Alderaan, Krypton to Alderaan, Krypton to Alderaan, Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome, everyone, to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me is Roish Goodlooks, your Star Wars format guy.
Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, and we're the podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but mostly Star Wars. And this episode, we're talking about The Acolyte, Episode 4, Day. We're halfway through the series, and I wish it wasn't going to end. But first, before we get into that, we are just so close to 1,000 subscribers. We're closer than we've ever been before. So if you could help us out, give us that last little push into our next milestone of 1,000 subscribers, that would be great. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give us some likes. Give us some comments. Tell your friends. We are just so close, and we appreciate everyone's help. Thank you so much for everything. That's enough of that. Let's punch it. All right, straight out the gate. Here we go. Vibe check. What do we think? Episode 4, Day, halfway through the season. This is the mid-season episode.
Dude, last week we had such a juicy episode. It was lore heavy. You loved the Force lore. I loved learning about the witches, this other culture within the Star Wars universe. And this episode was just such a short and sweet little package. The shortest episode this season, only 34 minutes. And if you're looking at the timeline while you're watching it, the credits roll at like 28. Dude, it ended on such a banger. I know we're going to talk about it, but the pacing and the length of this episode really threw me for a loop coming off of last week. My vibe check last week, I was like, woo, we're so consistent. The runtimes are like roughly the same. This was 10 minutes shorter than last week. We got 44 minutes last week, 34 this week. So we didn't even get like a big juicy episode, but I did love a lot of the twists and turns within it. And of course, the cliffhanger ending. So I'm kind of in the middle on this one as far as like last week I thought was a little stronger than this, just because they didn't pack as much in. Also, you know, our lingering scenes show me what the characters are thinking. There was one specific scene that really irked me when Jecki and Ohsa were talking, and Jecki said, "You're defined by what you survived, not what you lost." And she puts her hand on Osha's shoulder. It was a really nice conversation they were having, and then they just wipe immediately to the next scene. Small gripe, but I could have gone for one more punch in on Osha's face to see her, you know, coming to terms with her feelings there. And maybe wouldn't have added 10 more minutes to the show, but would have drawn me in a little bit further, which is what I want. You know, I was drawn in so much last week. I was drawn in here or there this week, but we did lots of cuts from scene to scene, from character to character. Odd pacing, short overall length, but an amazing cliffhanger ending. I don't know if it was completely earned because I was left wanting so much more. It was your Force Awakens ending. Luke shows up and you say, this is just getting good. I remember sitting in the theater thinking I want 30 more minutes of this movie at least, and then it's over. So like there's a beauty in that type of formatting for the show, but also a deep frustration when you're like, dang, I want so much more. So that's how I'm feeling about it. How do you feel?
I would say don't give in to your hate just yet, Royce. It was definitely noticeable that this was a shorter episode, but this was my favorite episode so far. I really loved this episode for lots of reasons, one of which is the change in format. I don't think that any of this was a mistake. I'm not necessarily like happy that it was only 28 minutes long, not counting credits. I'm not put off by it that it was only 28 minutes long because the end felt like 30 minutes to me on its own, which I'll get to. But the formatting of this episode, I'm also a huge fan of the horror genre. And so much of this, especially the end, was horror. But like you're saying, I kind of had the completely opposite reaction to you, maybe, which will be an interesting way to have this conversation. I think that with a lot of this stuff, like you're saying, with Jackie and Ohsa having those moments that we want to see, we want to linger. The episode 3 had so many. We existed in the emotional space with those characters. I had said that episode 3 was the most emotional episode of Star Wars that I had ever seen. This episode, we are specifically not allowed to feel that. Jackie puts her hand on Osha's shoulder after they have that moment. We're not allowed to exist there. This is not comfortable. We cannot be comfortable. It's called day, and we're in the light on Coruscant, and everyone's in their temple robes, the gold robes and the bright colored robes. As much as this episode exists in the light physically, we are not allowed to be comfortable in it. There's very little flow in this episode. Like you're saying, we get a lot of wipes. It's very kind of herky-jerky between characters, between conversations, between feelings, between like what we thought we knew about characters or how we would have guessed characters would react to a thing. It's completely the opposite of everything that I expected, which is great. I love it when that stuff happens, and we speculate a lot here. I love it when like my expectations are subverted. But as much as I love the lingering and emotional storytelling, I love it when, from my perspective, they're doing this very purposeful thing of not letting us be comfortable. We are just not allowed to feel good. We're not allowed to feel at peace because something bad is coming. There was no question as soon as we saw all of the Jedi that saw recruits to go to Kofar, I knew that the scene from the trailer, the first trailer, was coming. We're introduced to the Red Blade, whoever it is, whether it's a Sith or whatever. We see day turn to night, and the ultimate level of discomfort comes when we just see this presence literally like descending on our heroes. And so, yeah, I loved the formatting changes.
You know, that makes a lot of sense that they want you to feel uncomfortable. I wanted to sit in that scene with Jackie, but you're right. Boom, we're in the next scene. The episode is titled Day, and we're running the whole time. They're saying, we got to get there before nightfall. Who knows what's going on in this forest? Something is weird. It's rotten. Something's wrong here. Like you said, they're kind of building up that suspense and like almost horror element. Oh man, who are we going to call this guy?
Zipperface? I don't know.
When Darth Zipperface descends, there's a great, string. Great arranging with the music there. Oh, also, to call back to our favorite series, Lost, lots of great, you could just superimpose Hollywood and Vines over some of these scenes and it would be great. The tromp through the woods. If nothing else, this invoked a lot of those emotions for me.
We could do a side-by-side. Check your screens if you're watching on YouTube. Here's a side-by-side of this episode of The Acolyte, them walking up on the hill, and this episode of Lost, them walking up on a hill, and Michael Giacchino's Hollywood and Vines playing, which is one of my favorite themes of anything ever. But yeah, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that scene.
All those episodes, you're always walking to something cool to uncover something, or there's, Lost is the greatest mystery show, sci-fi mystery show of our day. So yeah, I was getting the parallels there. You saying that last scene felt like 30 minutes is such a generous way to look at that, because the episode was so darn short and it ends and you're like, I need to see the next darn scene. Really great cliffhanger ending though. So it sounds to you like it was earned, like the journey to that point, it was enough.
100% felt earned to me. I'm so happy with the cliffhanger ending. The way it was all set up, like you said, we were chasing the daylight. Mae is in Kelnaka's hut. We see Kelnaka dead, which huge bummer. I really wanted to spend, I know we're going to get another flashback with him in it, but I wanted to spend a little bit more time with that character and get to see a Wookiee Jedi on screen. There's obviously something weird going on with him, but then we see Mae. She wants to turn herself in. She sees Kelnaka's body and she says he's here. And as soon as she says that, the lights go dim. It's nighttime. And we get this very dense, ominous, as night is descending on the characters and the audience, this Sith is descending on our heroes. And it just felt so heavy. And with that gravity comes a time distortion, at least for me, of feeling like, wow. And that's the moment that we do linger. We linger on Saul Jackie said, "What is that?" Which is just a really scary thing for like a kid to say. No one knows what this is. No one's seen anything like this in maybe 1,000 years. And the youngest member of the group is the one to be like, "What is that?" And there's something so like ominous, especially from the child's perspective, I think there, which I would say Jackie reads as a teenager to me. So I think that fits. We linger on Ohsa. She turns around, and then we linger on the scene between this thing and Ohsa as it lights up its lightsaber. I thought Ohsa was a goner at that point, and then just boom, a swift movement of its hand. Also that level of power, but something else, it's literally floating and descends down, which is not something that many Force users can do. It's written in books that the ability to like fly is something that not a lot of Force users are able to do. They can jump high and boost themselves and stuff like that. And Torben, when characters are taking something like the Barrage Vow and giving themselves over entirely to the Force, that can happen. But that ability to be able to do that is something that's relatively rare. So just that level of power also to see is incredible.
The dark side is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
But yeah, so that all was so well earned for me. It kind of takes away any complaints I would have about the actual runtime of the show.
Yeah, I agree with the time distortion that when you're sitting there, you're like, what is going to happen next? And maybe you're thinking that trailer scene is going to pop up, which was great. I'm glad that that was like drawn out as well. Everyone lighting up their lightsabers. I've got a couple cool screen grabs we'll throw up here. Boom, boom, boom. So I'm with you that did kind of draw things out, but then it ends and you're like, I just want more. And like I said, there's a balance there. Also, who knows what they cut from this episode, if there were other things. I didn't know if it was going to be like a monster of the week in the middle. Were we going to battle every single one of those flying thingamajiggies?
Bugs.
Yeah. I'm glad it wasn't like that. I was also wondering if we were going to get Mae comes out of the hut and she's like, I didn't do it. And there's a little back and forth before, the next step. That would have been kind of cool too, to further confuse everyone. Like, Kalnaka's dead, but Darth Zipperface just shows up and that's the reveal, right? But they're still going to have to find out that Kalnaka's dead.
No, there was definitely that moment, again, a very horror movie moment where I'm yelling at the TV like I wanted Mae to run out there and warn everybody.
Don't go down there.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard for me to contain my excitement and be more analytical because this was my favorite episode of this show so far. And everyone listening knows how much I've enjoyed the series so far. So this is kind of like set a new bar for me within the show. It also just hit on a lot of stuff that I personally enjoy, like the horror tropes and stuff like that. I still think we got the emotional moments. They were just taken away from us quickly. I love that moment with Ohsa and Jackie on Coruscant. I loved seeing Coruscant. It was just so cool and seeing like the hustle and bustle of Coruscant when Ohsa is like leaving. But we also get to see Ohsa and Mae react to learning that each other is alive in completely opposite and, from my perspective, contradicting ways. Saul has to be the one to tell Ohsa there's still good in her, which is a Star Wars trope, to be sure, and a welcome one, but usually it is the family member saying that. Saul is trying to convince Ohsa that there's good in Mae, and it's because of Saul's grief, which we learn later he's like willing to come clean about everything. And that is emotional because, again, like I said last episode, I can read the emotion on Saul's face. And we get Mae on the other side saying, my allegiance is to Ohsa, not your master, she says to Kamir, which she had just called him my master. She's done with it. She's like ready to give it up. So opposite ways, we think of Ohsa as the good sister and Mae as the evil sister. But Mae's the one wanting to return to the light, and Ohsa is the one trying to run away.
Yeah, I do really like this flip-flopping of Mae wanting to abandon Kamir, and Ohsa sort of being like almost teased back into the Jedi Order. Jackie had mentioned a few things to her when they were on Coruscant that was like, don't you want to help us on the mission? And she's like, well, no, it's the Jedi's problem. And later on Kofar, she says, I don't handle my grief like a true Jedi would. Jackie pushes back, a true Jedi? Those are some little emotional nuggets there of her thinking like, oh, you know what? Maybe I could, maybe there's a chance that I could return to this order, which I want to see her come back to the light side. And I want to see Mae walk away from this dark side. They're both kind of doing that, but we don't know exactly where that's going to go. But they are diverging from their original paths. Again, the Star Wars trope is Mae redeemable. Are they going to come together? Do they both join the Jedi? Because Mae's even saying, like, once I tell them what I know, I'm not going to go to prison. I'll be in their good graces. Like, but she's also a Force user that you would think they would want to then make sure that she wasn't going to go be. I don't know how the Jedi treat other Force users that haven't just left the Order, that haven't just like walked away. They talk about Count Dooku. Oh, he could never do a bad thing. He was once a Jedi. So that must be how maybe they look at people like Ohsa. But Mae, I mean, she's murdered Jedi. So how could they let her kind of get away from that, even if she came back in, gave them information? That's also really interesting if the Jedi are like, oh, that's okay. That's okay by us. We will ignore this, you know?
If she was being played by this master, then maybe, and she has information. That is like a crime mystery trope. I've done some bad stuff. I have information you want. I'll give you the information if you expunge my record or whatever. It's very that. Mae has obviously been brought in and manipulated by the dark side. Ohsa, she became a Jedi. She left the Jedi Order. We see on Kofar her getting back in touch with the Force, and it ends badly. She regrets what happened. She wakes up that bug. It reacts to her in a part of the Force that is, quote unquote, rotten. I think there's a lot here of saying that, like, Mae and Ohsa might have been created by the dark side or a dark side use of the Force. And so I think there's manipulation here to be done of the dark side user to say, look at what happens. You want to be a Jedi and you want to use the Force for good and your family dies. Everything you touch ends badly or dies. And bringing Ohsa over to the dark side with that manipulation. Whether or not Mae stays there as well or they flip-flop sides, I think it would be really interesting to see. There's a moment in The Last Jedi when Ben offers his hand to Rey, or Kylo offers his hand to Rey, and I always wanted Rey to join him, but then like bring him to good from the bad side. To see Mae go with them, but then try to get Ohsa back on the right track. There's something to be said of they might have been created, literally, by a dark use of the Force. Are they inherently bad? Are they destined to be bad guys? That's what I'm starting to feel is maybe a theme or a thesis of the show. How much control are you in of your destiny? Especially if you were like created by the Force that binds the galaxy together.
The twists and turns keep coming. This is what the show is doing very well. You know, got to hand it to them. Whatever you think it is, it's not. It still doesn't feel like it's fully revealed, which is great. You know, I like seeing that Mae's abandoning Kamir and how that's going to affect the rest of the storytelling. It seems like it's pissed off the Darth Zipperface character that he said, oh, okay, then I'll just kill Kalnaka and I'll shake things up and, you know, it will be chaos from here on out. Like, that's scary. And that's just, it's a fun ride to go on as a viewer. A lot of people were making the metaphor like the thread, you pull it and you unravel something, right?
Interesting.
If you want to destroy the Force, whoa, 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 pull this thread.
Roy's Good Looks is next song.
So maybe there's something to like they separated. And the moment that Ohsa wanted to separate from Mae is when things go awry. Like you're saying, if there's some kind of dark side thing that wants to keep them together, or even light side thing that wants to keep them together. What happens when they are together? What happens when they're together under someone as endearing as Sol, the light side Force user? What happens when they're together under Darth Zipperface, the flying Sith? So
right.
Both of those things, I want to see how those go. Like the redeemable evil character or the potentially like conflicted good character that speculation station, if Sol bites the dust, Darth Zipperface takes him out, takes all the other Jedi out, and, you know, Ohsa has nothing left but to join.
We've talked about kind of maybe how scary and eerie the ending of this episode was, but right before they go into the end, Saul is ready to like reveal his truth to Ohsa.
Yeah, he says, you're going to face your past, both of us will, and once we get made to the ship, I promise I'll explain everything.
Right, which is great. We think we're going to get some answers. Ohsa thinks she's going to get some answers. But that's what characters say right before they're about to die, right? Because it's like dangling the carrot, the little information that we all want to know. And then obviously the character gets taken out before they can reveal the truth. are they going to make it? Is anyone making it out of this? Like, we've seen almost all of the footage from the trailers at this point. I think there's opportunity here for maybe there to be a clean slate. This Darth Zipperface, I really wish we hadn't started saying that. I think there's a huge opportunity here for that character to just destroy all of these heroes. We've been talking about how Saul is this beacon of light. He's the one Jedi in this series that maybe we can point to and say, that's a good guy. What happens to the last 4 episodes for us if Saul's not around? And does it subvert our expectations if everyone gets wiped out? I mean, Saul, Jecki, Yord, I think that will be absolutely devastating. And then whether like Vernestra has to then go investigate or whatever, but do we get a whole new cast and crew here for the latter half of this season?
I don't want a full replacement, but there's obviously a couple of, red shirt Jedi that we might not necessarily miss. Who's going to miss 4 Jedi? I brought up Force Awakens earlier with the cliffhanger ending. Like, maybe this is kind of like the scene where Kylo takes Rey. He doesn't get the information right away. He's like, I'm going to put you to sleep and then bring you back to my ship because you're going to be useful. Maybe this Sith Lord, wants Mae and Ohsa together and used Mae to draw Ohsa out through these murdering of, the Jedi that are connected to her. It's not about killing these Jedi at all. It's about getting you two back together so that I can do some other gnarly, unnatural Force stuff back at my lair.
What does Palpatine say?
The power of the 2 restores the 1.
Very specific language being used there. I think a lot of this is going to tie together.
What do we say? It's filling in the somehow.
Yeah, exactly. This has the opportunity, like we've talked about with the Bad Batch, to fill in some of the somehow that we see happen or that we like make jokes about happening in stuff like the sequel trilogy.
I don't think it has to tie into that perfectly, but that's a nice use. Like you said, the language there is exactly the same. But I would really love to see, if that's the way we're going, Soul saying, no, Ohsa, don't give in, don't go with them, or not being able to stop. Oh, this would be great. Just in the way that Soul couldn't save Mae, didn't even realize that she was still there to be saved. He loses Ohsa in a similar manner. It's out of his control.
I don't like that, but I'll feel the feelings. I was thinking about like what happens if we lose Saul, but everything you just brought up makes it so much more heartbreaking, and I don't think I'm ready for it. So now I'm scared. I will reiterate a point that I made last episode, though, that I am enjoying this show so much that I do not care what happens next. I'm personally really enjoying all of this, and this episode has been my favorite so far.
Something this past week that I just was a light bulb moment for me, seeing all of the negativity towards the show and frankly towards people that like the show. To me, I just want to see where it goes. I'm wondering if we go right back to the flashbacks. Like, formatting is so interesting, Joey. If we get another flashback, if we don't go right into this battle, I think that might also put some people off.
As of the way I'm feeling right now, I would be a little disappointed if we did not pick up right where this one left off. I see a world where like we don't have a full flashback episode, but we start the episode with a flashback that explains maybe why Kelnaka is writing those symbols all over the hut. But I would be a little disappointed if the whole episode was something completely different. Man, I would really love to see the immediate next scene. After that,
we have a lot of tolerance, but if we don't see the conclusion of that lightsaber fight, it's tricky to do the flashback thing though, because we got 2 real-time episodes, 1 flashback, 1 real-time. So it's not like every other, it's not like flashbacks within episodes. So it is kind of touchy when you include, again, Boba Fett, another good example of like when we're flashing back or going to a completely different series in the middle of a series. So always tricky to make that stick the landing. Yeah, I'm with you. We got to go right back to the lightsaber fight. Let's see what they do next week. All right, listeners, let's keep this conversation going. We would love to hear from you. Leave your comments here on YouTube and make sure to subscribe to help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We're so close. Maybe we're there already. Either way, subscribe and tune in next time for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly the Acolyte for 3 to 4 more weeks. Maybe we get a double episode season finale. Who knows? But thank you for listening to the podcast today. I've been Royce.
I've been Darth Zipperface.
And we've been
Krypton to
Alderaan.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Not Kashyyyk.